Yeah, Datora is such a big name in Brazil. Like I was in November, I was in São Paulo, and when I entered the border guard, he asked me like, "Who you're gonna be meeting here in São Paulo?" And I said, "Datora." He said, "Ah, Datora, you go."
Sales guy is always a sales.
For the last 10 or so years, I've been speaking to many new MVNO startups, and recently, probably for the last 2 years, I'm probably speaking to 2 new startups every week at least. Sometimes it's every day. And I'm kind of getting fed up with the misconceptions and pretty wrong ideas about what MVNO is. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to collect all of them and share it with you as a point of discussion mainly. What people think MVNOs are and what MVNOs actually are. And this is what I wanted to talk about. People have very different ideas about the sizes of MVNOs. Well, the Torah, you plan to manage like up to 4 million SIM cards this year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that gives you a size, and people have very different ideas what they can and cannot do when they launch an MVNO. The level of engineering knowledge can be as bad as mine, but at least I'm not trying to launch an MVNO. People have very different ideas of how to focus on specific audiences for their demographics and for their business practices, and of course, business models. This is my favorite topic. Some people expect like really low average revenue per user, but it's not always the case. So let's speak in more details about that. So small market size. Not true. There are around less than 1,000 tier 1 operators in the world. There are more than 2,000 MVNOs in the world. And by the way, half of them are in Europe. In Canada, almost 30% of the market in terms of the subscriber count belong to MVNO. It's more in the States, and in Germany, it's almost half. The overall anticipation of the total count of subscribers by the middle of this decade is going to be 340 million. So it gives you an idea, and the growth is quite big. It's bigger than probably in other sectors of telecommunication industry. So it can be unsaturated, it can be a niche product, but it doesn't really mean that it's a small business. So that's one of the lessons and the messages I'm trying to communicate to the new startups. Lots of people think that MVNOs are less regulated because they are not like regular mobile operators, but this is not true at all, except for probably frequency regulations. The same rules would normally apply to MVNOs as to standard mobile network operators. Data protection, quality assurance, market competition, it's all standard all across the industry. In addition to that, I believe that MVNOs can be considered even more regulated because they need to accept the regulation not only from the government authorities but also from the network operators. Pricing structure, very strict technical requirements for interconnect, and essentially they need to rely on the infrastructure they don't actually own. So I guess that was one of the main drivers why Datora wanted to control as much as possible. What is the answer to that? Well, I usually tell my leads that they really need to build very strong relationship with their network operators, because their business essentially will depend on them, and they will, if they don't build that that relationship, they probably spend their time and efforts in fighting like MNOs and regulators and so on. Another misconception that really hurts me when I speak to the new leads is that people do believe that MVNOs is mainly about sales, marketing, and market segmentation and so on, and it doesn't really require any technical knowledge. I said, okay, you guys do your thing, and MNO will do their thing, but we really need to focus on sales and marketing. Unfortunately, this is not the case in the majority of business cases I've seen. Success, as in many business, would require a lot of understanding of engineering aspects and like technical base. The MVNOs actually need to integrate to mobile core and also to myriads of third-party systems, CRMs, know your customer, business intelligence, ticketing systems, gateways, and so on. So without that, perhaps it can be possible to find like a very nice little niche and focus on marketing for that niche, but otherwise it's probably a recipe to failure if you don't know your nuts and bolts. Additionally, the user experience will require understanding of front-end part of the business as well. So that's to keep in mind. Another myth. MVNOs are for individual consumer markets only. Well, Datora has been the best example, which I normally use, explaining that MVNOs are not only about residential subscribers. And recently I've been speaking to many Nigerians, because Nigerian Communication Commission issued over 40 licenses over the last 18 months for new MVNOs. And there is still not a single MVNO in the country. So when I speak to them, they say, and ask them, like, what kind of MVNO in marketing terms are you going to build? I say, oh, okay, it's going to be unlimited calling. It's going to be some data and messaging. And I'm asking, like, what are your subscribers gonna be? Oh, we have a big country, 200 plus million residents. We have enough space for everybody. Come on, if you have enough space for everybody, there will be one, maybe two companies who will take it all over, and you will become just a commodity, and you will compete on the partitions of the cents. So it's a really tough competition. If you want to do that, of course it's possible, but it's tough. So maybe when you start a new project, you need to think about differentiation. We had a case with a UK customer, one SIM. They started as a VoIP operator for cloud PBX products, and they really wanted to remove the desk phones from their customers. So they became a an MVNOs and replace the desk phones with the mobile. So that is a much more closer relationship to your subscribers, something that would not really allow them to switch to another operator overnight. In IoT business, that can be a big threat to your business, because if you just replace the SIMs in your devices, that can be done very, very fast, and you wouldn't even know about that just coming in the morning in the office and seeing like your consumption drops drastically. So this is what Andrew mentioned earlier today, that we now start to market IoT Meal, a rapid deployment kit for IoT startups, a device which eliminates a lot of hurdles when developing and prototyping the minimal viable product. Usually takes, from our experience, takes 12 to 18 months to develop something that works. So we can help to cut that time 10 times, basically. And my favorite, low ARPUs for MVNOs. In many cases, it is totally true, but not always. 58% of all MVNO customers do buy SIM cards because it's cheaper. But I've seen many cases where the cost is not the deciding factor. We had a customer who did the MVNO base and focusing on communication near to shore for the luxury yachts. So they could price their SIM cards as high as possible. Their only concern was that the connectivity is stable. So I don't know exactly what their ARPU was, but I guess it was much, much higher than an average operator. A few other stories, like here in Spain, Barcelona is extremely international city. 30 years ago, the total foreign population in Barcelona was slightly more than 1%. Now more than a quarter of all Barcelona population is born outside Spain. We have British MVNOs, we have Ukrainian and Russian MVNOs. All they do exactly the same, but they provide customer support in the respective languages. So their rates are slightly higher, but people still prefer to buy from them because it's convenient. I had a call with a guy who was launching an MVNO for businesses, and he wanted to specifically focus on call recording and CRM integrations for traveling sales force. So like this is your standard travel SIM, and this is something similar with higher margins, specifically focusing on business travelers. I had a conversation with a very nice lady who wanted to launch an MVNO for pet owners. So they could combine the online marketplace for pet products and also upsell them with the SIM cards. Again, it can be a bit more expensive than just a regular non-focused cloud that you get from a standard MVNO. I was in Turkey last week. They have an MVNO for every football club. There is a Fenersel for Fenerbahce, and they have GSM Mobile. It reads like GSM, but it's actually Galatasaray Mobile. And it's an audience that would never change that SIM card because it's associated with their preferred SIM card.
They have the team name in the operator
Yeah,
logo, right?
yeah, and like every week there is a competition for a real jersey worn by one of the players and so on. So very interesting business models, and they all what unite them. They are not betting on lower prices. They're focusing on higher margins for specific group of consumers. This is the collection whatever I had, and I'm glad I had an opportunity to share it with you. Thank you.